Hey everyone, welcome again to another lecture of React hooks, right? So today we'll be talking about this special hook that is known as the useMemo hook. Yes, the useMemo hook. Alright, so in the previous lecture we have talked about the use callback hook, but right now we'll talk about the useMemo hook, right? So just let me just tell you what this hook is and how will you use it, right? So this is also a hook which is used to optimize your performance. Let's see how will I do that, right? So what I've done over here is I have just taken a very simple example. I have created a counter, right? And how does this counter look? So let's just check this out. So over here in my components, you will find this counter, right? So a very basic counter I have created. I'm managing two states right now. So basically I'm managing two counters, okay? So one counter is this one and one counter is this one. So what they do is basically the purpose is the same, right? So if I go over here, let me just refresh this. If I go over here and if I click on this count, right? So this will basically increase the count, right? This will increase the count by 1. But this counter is special because this will tell you the type of the number as well. If it is an odd number, if it is an even number, what kind of a number that is, it will tell you that. But the second counter is just a simple counter. If I click on this, it will just increment the count by 1. That's about it. That's two counters, right? So one counter with this function, right? Whenever we increment this, we run this function, that is even function, and we check for the value, right? If the value modulus 2 is 0, then we quickly return it, right? So basically true and false will be returned. So if this condition is true, then even number will be printed, right? As you can see, for 3 it's odd, for 4 it's even, and if it's odd number will be printed if it's false, right? Like that. Very simple, very basic counters, two counters. But now what I want to do over here. Let's suppose that we are working on a big project, and when we are running this function, this function is a heavy function, right? Over here, this is just a small function. It is calculating the even number and it's giving you back the result. But if it is a heavy function, if it takes time to run, right? If it's a heavy function, if it has a complex calculation to do, if it has so many data that it should be calculating and then it should give the result, then what will it do, right? So to replicate this, what I will do is I'll just add a for loop over here. I'll just say let I equal to 0 and I less than, let me add this big of a number, right? 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, and let's add 9 zeros, right? Like that. And this loop is just a bare loop, right? This will not do anything, empty loop, right? So basically, but this will run, right? And this will run for this many times, right? Whatever the number is, I guess this is 2 crores or something like that, right? 20 crores, or you can discount it, right? Alright, so this is that particular number, right? Which will slow down this particular function. And if this can happen in any application, if you have some heavy calculations to do, we are just replicating that. Now let's basically try to run this code. So if I go back to my code and if I refresh everything, right? So everything is sorted. So let me just press this count, right? Let me just press on this button. If I click on this button, you see there is a delay now. If I click on it again, you can see there is a delay now. If I click on this again, there is again delay, right? So this particular button is getting that delay to update, right? Because it will always re-render when you are changing the state, and after re-rendering every time this function is running. And this function is actually a heavy function, right? There is heavy computation going on, right? So basically the loop is running for this many times, and after that only we are able to return the result. That's why it's taking that much time, right? Similarly, if I do this for the count 2 as well, you will see the same effect can be seen over here with the count 2, right? And this is not something that we want, because see, this component, it's necessary that this function should run, only then we can get the result, right? For this component, which is basically your counter 1. But if I talk about the counter 2, for counter 2, there's nothing necessary. This counter 2 doesn't actually returns anything, right? The job of this is to just increment the count by 1. But this is also getting slow. Why? Because when you change the state, when you're changing the state, your whole component, your whole app is getting re-rendered again, right? So this is also getting re-rendered. So this is again doing that same thing, but we do not want to do this, right? So what we can do, we can make use of a hook known as useMemo, right? useMemo. So what is this useMemo? useMemo hook, this useMemo hook can be used with this kind of functions, right? This can be used with this kind of functions to basically optimize it even more, right? So let me just use it first and I'll show you what it is actually doing. So how to use this useMemo hook? So whenever you have these kind of functions with a return value, so if you have some value that are being returned, right, you can basically use this over here. So what we can do is you can just use the useMemo like that, and this will be a function like that, and for the first parameter it takes the whole arrow function, right? So this arrow function will be its first parameter, and again it takes a dependency array. It takes a dependency array. So for this dependency, what are you going to pass? Yes, you're going to pass the value of counter 1, right? So we'll say when the value of counter 1 changes, then only we have to run this function, not when the counter 2 changes, right? So we can just pass our counter 1 inside this, right, like that. So let's go over here and now let's check. So if I refresh everything, okay, let's check this out. Okay, now see what happened over here, that now this useMemo is basically returning something. This is not a function right now. Before it was an arrow function, but right now this useMemo is returning a value. So we do not want to call this function because this will be now a value, right? So now let's check this out. So if I refresh this, yes, you see again everything is coming back, and now if I click on this, so this will take time. This will take time because whenever you will change this particular state, this computation will go on. This computation will go on. But if I click on count 2 right now, you see this is working smooth as butter, right? This is working smooth as butter. You can basically click on this and it will keep on increasing as it should, right? So this is not getting any delay because it's now not re-rendering again and using this particular easy event to calculate, right? So basically this is how you can use your useMemo hook. Now you will ask this question, that isn't it how we use the use callback as well? Right, we used it perfectly like this, but basically what I want you to show, to show you is basically when we use the useMemo hook, we actually memoize a value, right? We're talking about a return value, but when we use the use callback, right? If you see the parent component over here, we have used the use callback. So over here we are actually getting a full function, right? That is the only difference. So when we talk about use callback is used to contain a complete function, right? It completely caches a complete function. But if I talk about useMemo caches just one value, right? It will catch one value, the return value. That is the only difference, right? So this is how you can cache a value, and by using use callback you can cache a function. So this is how you can basically do both of these things with using these two hooks, right? And make your application better performing. Alright, I'll see you in the next lecture with another hook. Thank you.